Artist Nicole Watson here, and I am back playing in the Grafix Mixed Media Journal. I just ripped out that clear Duralar center sheet, which is made possible by this amazing binding of this journal. You can take in and out these pages easily, rearrange them, create with them outside of the journal, which I've done a little bit, create with them inside the journal, which I'm doing mostly in this tutorial because I'm doing or creating on a double page spread on the white Durabright craft plastic. I chose to do a 2-page spread this week for something different. I grabbed this ledger sheet that I'm using matte medium on the front and the back. This is the ledger sheet that I've already spray painted on using transparent black spray paint by Liquitex and a ledger sheet, and then one of my stencils. I do have a video where I do this on my YouTube channel. Just go over to Nicole Watson Art, or if you're already on my YouTube channel watching this, it's search for my stencils playlist, and it's in there. It's just simply spray paint through a stencil, and then I flipped it over and stamped with it. So this is the reverse of the stencil. You can see I just ripped out again one of those pages from the journal to make this a little bit of easier process. I decided instead of having the page like that on the journal page as it was, I ripped it in half to kind of allow that white space to not be so prominent, an inch on the top and an inch on the bottom. This helped fill the journal page a little bit more. Again, I'm using matte medium front and back only because I really like to use the matte medium to seal my journal pages, or the ephemera that I put on the journal pages because of some of my process in creating. It's important to me that I seal that up really well so that I can create on top of it. Now, Grafix has some really cool adhesives which you can use as well in your journal, and I'm going to use some at the end, but that won't seal the paper or the ephemera or whatever you're using to the page. And because of my wet, drippy, grungy process, it's important to me that I stick this down and seal it really well. If you're not familiar with matte medium, it's basically like clear paint, and so it seals this paper down much like a clear gesso would. And so it's allowing it to not only stick to my page, but allowing those fibers of the paper that are really porous to be sealed in so that I can continue to create my mixed media, messy, grungy layers on top of it. I also ripped part of that ledger sheet out that wasn't going to fit on the paper, wasn't so prominent, and I thought I'd use it for little scraps to spread throughout the page to kind of break up some of that white space so it wasn't so blocky looking. My idea in mind here is I'm creating really a chaotic background. You already saw what my final product, so you know why, but right now I don't know what my final product is going to be. I just kind of have an idea in mind, and I'm allowing the things that I do, the way my paintbrush moves, to determine my next steps, I guess. And so I grabbed this little check stub that I had in my pile of papers on my desk. I chose it because it matched that ribbon that I just pointed out, that sorry ribbon from the week before, or the month or two before when I created. And I also thought I'd kind of keep the colors in this journal cohesive. I thought that would be kind of fun. And so the first page that I created on it used green and browns and some of the Payne's gray. My second page was really more brown toned, and so this one's going to combine all of those, and I'm going to kind of keep that same color way throughout. So I'm just ripped apart this check, and I'm spreading it on the page in places that don't have a lot of interest, kind of to bring it all together. This check was kind of cool. You can see it has little faint stripes on it, so I decided to keep the stripes all going horizontal. I could have done it horizontal and vertical, but I like the consistency of the stripes all going the same way. And then I also used the front and the back of the check. The check had some signatures and handwriting on the back. The front had some cool graphics. So I just went back and forth, covered up spaces I didn't like as much, and just placed it in spots that needed a little bit more interest. Again, I'm using matte medium for this process so I can seal those fibers of those checks in so I can create on them much easier with paint. Now I'm going to use some gesso here to kind of push some of the ephemera back, bring it all together. I popped that page right back into the journal so I can look at it as the double page spread. I like to see it all together so I can kind of create some consistency as I add that gesso? I don't know why I said jello. And you can see I also put some Titan Green Pale on my palette paper there. I decided not to use it in the beginning. I do use it in a little bit, but I didn't like the look of it as much, so I'm just going to just purely used the gesso, watering it down quite a bit. I want it to be drippy, grungy, a little bit more see-through so that you can still see some of the cool layers of the paper behind, but this is just allowing all of those papers to kind of come together, merge together, not look so patchworked. So it kind of looks cohesive in the background. While I waited for that gesso to dry a little bit, I did scoop up that Titan green pail that I didn't use and put it back into the paint tube because it was plainly good and not tainted, but there was a little bit left on my palette there, and I thought, I should use that up. So I added some water to it, watered it down really good, and I'm just putting it in places to add a tiny bit more interest on top of some of that gesso. I watered it down a lot, so I'm also flicking it on the page, getting some cool little marks with that, and just using that little bit of color on the page. Next, I wanted to add another layer. Like I said, I'm trying to create a little bit of chaos in this background. I grabbed this really cool number stamp that I found, and I'm just going to stamp a bunch of numbers mostly on the edges using the Archival ink. Archival is waterproof, so that next when I add the paint and other watery, grungy layers, it's not going to run and make a mess on my journal pages. Any cool bold stamp would work for this. Make sure you use a waterproof ink like that Archival ink. For the other layers, any kind of ephemera would work. Any kind of stencil, either sprayed with spray paint or any other kind of permanent ink would work great for this process. Just use this as inspiration, and the supplies that you have on hand will be perfect for however you create. So that black ink is really, really sticking out. It's the darkest element on the page. The spray paint and the green check are really pale in the background. So I need to add kind of a middle ground here to kind of soften that black, bring it all together. So I grabbed that raw umber, and I'm just watering it down and adding some shadows with it on my page for two reasons. One, like I just mentioned, as you can see, this it all helps it come together. I'm putting it a lot in the areas of those black numbers to kind of push them back a little bit, but also because my next layer is going to need it, and you'll see why in just a minute. Oftentimes, I like to speed the process of creating and drying together, so I do sometimes use my hairdryer on the cool setting and kind of speed that process along. Next, I grab some of this really cool onion skin ledger paper that I have to add to the background. It's got a really neat watermark on it and a super brown undertone to it, so I'm going to put it mostly in those spots that I added that shading with the raw umber, just for the interest of the handwriting. Now, if you don't have something like this, you could use any kind of handwriting stamp that you have, stamp it on some white tissue paper. You could coffee dye or tea dye the tissue paper to get the brown color. You could stamp directly onto your journal page as well with any kind of handwriting stamp. I loved how my ledger page is vertical, the handwriting going up and down, and now I'm adding the second ledger page going horizontal, and so I'm getting another layer of chaos in my background. I love this additional layer of chaos that this onion skin paper is adding to my journal. Much like that check, I'm just making sure that I have it spread throughout the page so that I can see it everywhere, knowing, again, what I'm planning on doing for my final kind of layer of interest. And as you already saw in the beginning, I have some really cool leaves as my final layer of interest, but you don't know how I created them. So here's the secret. I wanted to make some stencils. However, I didn't want to think about what I was going to draw, and I knew that I had some really neat leaves drawn several places in my journal, so I just picked one of them. These are some leaves that I hand drew already, so it's my own design, but I didn't want to have to think about it. I didn't want to have to erase and redo and spend an hour making the perfect leaves, so I just put the stencil film on top of my journal and traced with the Sharpie leaves that I already had. Since these leaves are kind of overlapping on my journal, I just moved the stencil over to not have the overlap because I want 3 individual leaf shapes here. And I'm just really kind of really lightly outlining it. Once I get the outline, I'm going to take the stencil off of my journal and clean it up a little bit, kind of change some of the shapes and manipulate it just a little bit more to make sure I have it cut out how I want. So I just pulled that journal away, put that stencil film on my desk, and I'm just going to kind of clean up some of these leaves to make them better shapes, kind of change the design just a little bit here and there and get them cleaned up. And then simply I'm going to grab my scissors and cut them out. Because I have them all the way down to the bottom of the stencil film, I can cut them out with scissors and not an X-Acto knife. I am not great with using an X-Acto knife, so I find that scissors work a little bit better for me. The one thing I want to point out that I love about the stencil film, because it's matte and I use the Sharpie, I can see through it. So I'm able to flip it upside down and right side up as I need to cut around these leaves perfectly, which is a huge advantage when you're right-handed or left-handed, so you're always cutting on the easiest side of the shape. And now I have 3 masks, and I also have a stencil. Now I'm not going to use the stencil on this journal page, but I want to point out, if I wanted to use this, because it's kind of wonky on the bottom, since I don't have like a solid piece there, I could use a piece of tape on the bottom to tape it together so that I could make a true stencil. Now I'm just going to use the actual masks that I created instead of the stencil. I grabbed my Payne's Gray, one of these foam applicators, and I get to work. This is going to be the same process 3 times, so I'm going to kind of talk through it, and then I'll let you watch it. If there's something that I need to point out, I'll break in and share it with you, but basically I'm using this applicator around the mask, and then I'm able to pick it up, look at it, and put it back down as I need, which is really great. I have to do a little, if you've played the game of Twister before, a little bit of finger twister here, because sometimes you have to manipulate your fingers around the mask so it doesn't move. So it's a little bit more complicated when you have such a delicate stencil. Had I known that I was going to use the actual mask on the page, I might have used like a repositionable adhesive on the back of it, and then it would have been easier to use the applicator on it, but it ended up working out fine. I do use my baby wipe a couple times to wipe it away so that I can get the next one on the page. Again, once I use that foam applicator around the mask, I manipulate the paint around it. I water it down a little bit, move it around the page. I want it to look grungy and messy. I'm not doing the most perfect job with that foam applicator, so allowing that leeway to manipulate it after you use the applicator, you'll get it more even, because it doesn't come out perfect. So using that watered down paint and a paintbrush to just move it around the page makes a huge difference. Now that I've put that third mask down and used the applicator around it, I'm just going to do some final touching up here. I'm going to use some darker paint around the edges to kind of pull out those shapes that didn't get applied as well as others, some of those leaf shapes. I'm going to use a baby wipe to pull up some of the paint where I have too much because I want the background to show. And it's just an overall push and pull of putting down paint, picking it up, looking for spots that look funny, and just being patient with the process. Because I used that matte medium in the beginning to seal my papers down onto this page perfectly, I can manipulate this paint, move it around, use lots of water. The papers don't soak it up because they're sealed with that matte medium. It allows me to make this grungy, cool, watercolory effect on top of my journal page using acrylic paint. And now that I'm happy with that right side, it's still a little bit wet, so I have to be careful. I'm going to use the actual masks on my journal page. Now, the only problem with this is that I can't reuse them again on another page. However, there's more stencil film. I can always cut out more. I actually have the stencil, so I can use that. I could use that to trace to make some more masks if I want to. I love having my own stencil film to create masks and stencils. Now, in order to stick these down on the page, I am using Grafix Artist Tac. It's a really cool adhesive. You simply pull it back. It's 2 sheets, and I'm struggling here because of the pressure of the camera, but it's actually really easy. Once you pull it back, you put your paper, your stencil, your photo, whatever you want on top of the sticky part, and I'm putting all 3 of the masks down at one time. Flip that lid back over, push them down, and then you peel them off. It is so quick and easy. I'm going to peel off this first one and show you. The adhesive is just little tiny dots, which is really cool. And I'm going to stick all 3 of these down on the page. Once I have them in place, I'll place this this stencil, I cannot think of the right word, the Artist Tac paper itself right on top of it to kind of burnish them down and make sure they're completely stuck to my journal page. And now that those masks are completely stuck down, that left side of the page is looking a little bit too crisp and clean to me. So I'm going to use some of that Payne's gray and place it around the edges of the page, kind of grunge it up a little bit, allow it to look a little bit more like that right side. I also thought that that white center was just a little bit too white, so I'm going to add some of the Payne's gray there. I'm going to add it in like 2 or 3 layers to get it dark enough, but this is my final step of this really cool double page spread using the Grafix Mixed Media Journal, the Artist Tac, and the Stencil Film. Thanks so much for watching. I hope this inspires you to try out the Stencil Film and create your own stencils and masks, your own design. Copy something from a journal page that you already love and want to recreate and don't want to have to like draw it perfectly again. Because that Stencil Film is clearish, you can do that. It's a wonderful product. Thanks so much for watching, and be sure to check out the other pages that I've created in this journal. The videos are here on the Grafix channel or also on my own personal YouTube channel. I hope you have a wonderful day.